Thanks very much for having us on board, mate.
There are 3 big stages, according to you, that we go through, and we have to go through that big thing called divorce.
Yeah, but when we went through the research of the book, we found that the 3 key areas of, I suppose, and they're kind of linear in format. Where the first stage is we obviously decide, we're going to separate for whatever reason, and there's thousands of different causes where the couple decides, look, we're going to go our separate ways. We're going to decide, we've decided that we need to, I suppose, go in different directions. And at that stage, one of the critical aspects is, from a financial perspective, it's a key decision point of knowing what paperwork and documentation you need to take with you, because depending on the reasons, or I suppose the circumstances, in terms of how well or how badly you get along with your partner, at times it could be the last chance that you get to sort of access this information, i.e. passports or bank accounts or the like. So we cover that off fairly specific on the type of documents, etc., that you will require for the next phase.
Confrontational anyway, just having to come to that acknowledgement that that's what's going to happen. Yeah. So many people's lives, and then disentangling. That's just a big challenge in itself. You just want to get out at the end of a relationship, and sometimes you do it to your own detriment.
Yeah, look, that's hitting the nail on the head. We've actually got a mantra through the entire book, which basically says, our experience of helping couples through this financially is that, for whatever reason, and I mean, I think it's obvious once you go through it, is that when emotions are high, intelligence is low, and there's not many more emotional circumstances than, when, you've probably, been together for a while, and, suddenly all the hopes and dreams or all the plans that you made suddenly have to change because, circumstances have changed. So yeah, totally agree with that.
How do you get around that?
Look, a lot of it is getting perspective. A lot of the nerves that we found were there come from the point of view of, I don't know what happens next. The anxiety comes about through saying, it's not something that when we say I do, we expect it to sort of change. So we're, in a lot of cases, the couples that we've interviewed, when they've gone through that, a big part of the anxiety is, what do I do next? I mean, how do I do this? There's no real rule book apart from, there's the legal side, which is obviously, going to a solicitor and working that out. But there's no sort of game plan, and it's one feedback. We're working fairly closely with a lot of larger law firms at the moment, and they're actually using this book as a framework to at least guide their clients on what's coming next. So it couples up nicely with the legal process of it.
Talking to Wilson Luna on ABC Gold Murray, author of Real Money Advice for Divorce. Anybody gone through that, where you just wanted to get out, and maybe down the track, even a couple of years later, you look back and thought, oh, geez, I just wish that I hadn't let this go, or I wish I hadn't made that concession in my rush just to put that behind me. How did it work out for you? Were you able to meet those challenges? Wilson, I just don't think you can blame anybody for wanting to put it all behind him. There's times when it's just too emotional, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That's where some kind of, if you can, the rational thing comes about, and it's easier said than done, is having something in black and white and saying, look, a better day will come around the corner. And I just don't want to. The biggest regret we find when we interview people 4 or 5 years down the track, exactly what you said, they turn around, they say, I should have got my fair share of that. Or, I gave in to my emotion, just said, look, stuff it, have it or keep it, or, and it's just all about making sure that you've got a checklist that says, this is what I'm entitled to. These are the options in which I can go for that, because a lot of people believe that it's only through the court system that one can gain their assets, and that's totally not true. It can be an out-of-court settlement. It can be even choosing your solicitors. There's the right ways to do it, and there's the wrong ways to do it. But because most of us never experienced that process, we're not sure how to do it. So it's that checkpoint of saying, how do you find that right solicitor, and how do you reduce your overall cost when you see them, making sure that you're prepared enough that you're not spending, large amounts of money getting your solicitor to do things that probably you could have pre-prepared yourself. So there's a lot of considerations there.
Once you make some of these concessions, that can be it, done and dusted. Things like property, for instance. Maybe it can change a little bit when it comes to access to children. Is that right? Can you change things with children down the track?
You can. Look, from a child support and a parenting plan perspective, there's always the chance of, there's always the opportunity to change it down the track. I mean, it's better to get it right up front, obviously, because at least that way, particularly if it's an emotional breakup, you probably will want to put a little bit of distance between yourself and your partner for a little while. It's probably usually the way that it works out. So you don't want to be changing it all of a sudden. You'd probably want to fix most of it up at that time, because you also don't want to be continually coming backward when, post the divorce. The one thing that you should probably be focused on is the next door that will open, or the next opportunity that, to I suppose start getting your life back together. So if we're constantly going back and rechanging things, we indirectly, we keep walking into that emotion once again of the whole process. So it is possible to change in that regard, but our suggestion is, you take a bit more time during that settlement period and make sure that both parties, as best as possible, get it right. But yeah, this is one of the reasons there was when we started writing the books. One thing that was short that became really I suppose stood out for us was that there was no money guide out there that related to the money aspects. There was a lot in the emotional side. There was a bit in the legal side, but there was nothing that was in black and white guiding people on how to walk through this process from a financial point of view. And that, it's just, we even looked at the Google aspect of it, because today, as we know, most people, when they're looking for information, they'll go through the World Wide Web, and we found that there's over 350,000 hits on trying to find information in this area per month. So we thought, there's obviously I suppose a need for people to access this type of information, and because of that, we've, since its release, we've just found, that even the legal profession and we're in chats with Relationship Australia currently to sort of try and do something to hopefully, ease the pain, or at least provide support mechanisms in that regard. So we're really glad that, it's helping people.
Author of Real Money Advice for Divorce, Wilson Luna, with us on ABC Gold Murray. Your calls, 1300 147 222. Getting through a divorce and trying to make sure that you don't do it to your own detriment just because you want things to hurry up. Wilson, is divorce typically more costly for either sex?
That's a good one. There's so many options today on how to do it, and just to I'll give you a little bit of a guidance, and this should only be used as a guidance, but generally speaking, look, you'll probably spend, if you do it out of court, etc., probably around about the $3,000 mark is a general guideline each person will spend on it. That's reaching a settlement outside of court. If you do decide to go down the court and you get to the consolidation conference stage, which is sort of, I suppose, a midpoint, you can roughly ballpark aim to spend about $7,000 each. And if you go the whole way, including, let's say, 2 days in court, etc., you can go anything up to $25,000, and the sky's the limit on that front, depending on, I suppose, the complexity of it, how many days in court. And basically, and this is the interesting one, the more money people spend doesn't necessarily mean that the outcome will, particularly if you go full-blown into courts, the longer cases are generally due to I suppose, anger between the couples versus actually having more to settle. So it's more of a trying to create more pain for the other person, and usually doesn't work out favourably in that regard. Lastly, once you've gotten through all of that, just getting yourself back on your feet. Yeah, key. Absolute key. It's like, I describe it as a tennis match. There's no doubt about that. There's no upside to getting divorced. I mean, from a financial perspective, both sides will lose. The male will generally lose more assets, i.e. from the household assets perspective, particularly if the female ends up keeping the kids. She'll generally end up inheriting the house or getting the house on settlement. Whilst from a, I suppose, work flexibility perspective, they've got more time to increase their income, yet it goes below average because of the amount of time, because of child support, etc. So from a female's perspective, her household wealth goes up, but yet her earning capacity, if there's kids involved and she's the childminder, that goes down perspective. So no one really wins, but from moving forward perspective, it's a matter of saying, okay, this is where I'm starting from. I probably lost the last set of tennis now, of the last match, but moving forward, what do I need to do? Do I need to improve my backhand? Do I need to, get that extra part-time job? Do I need to, evaluate other ways that I can access money and maybe take care of the kids or juggle a few things around so I can get back to where I need to get back to? That's the vital part. It's, the light at the end of the tunnel from our perspective and our research is that majority of people that have gone through the process 5 years later will generally see it as as that door that needed to close in order for a better door to open. So hopefully that shed some light in otherwise, I suppose, pretty emotional time.
Let's hope it can wind up as something positive and a positive step forward for people who've got to go through something they obviously don't want to have to go through. Thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. Author of Real Money Advice for Divorce, Wilson Luna. Wilson, all the best.
Thank you very much, man. Thanks for having us on the show.